It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
So my friends, November 5th's coming around the corner, and that's the big day, Election Day. Now, here's the interesting thing, folks. We're going to hear a lot of stuff, okay? You're going to hear a lot of stuff from all the politicians and how wonderful they are and what they're going to do for you. We're already hearing that on Congress. And some of the people who are running for the presidential election on the Democrats, we're hearing so many things. But I kept saying to you over and over again, what are the qualifications? And when someone tells you they're doing something, are they doing it for you? Remember, you pay county taxes and you pay school taxes. So if you have people who are mismanaging those areas, you end up paying more because of their stupidity. Okay, so what we're going to do today, we have Schuylkill County Coroner Dave Moylan on the show, and he ran 2011 and was made the election and was coroner 2012. Now, the questions I have for Dr. Moylan is this: what did he do? What did he tell you? What did he accomplish? So, Doc, thanks for coming on the show.
Sam, it's always a pleasure. I truly mean that, since we've been doing this since
a long time.
2011. But as I said off camera, you are the studs Terkel of interviewing. And like there's an art of the deal, there's an art of the interview, and you have it, my friend.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I still have hard questions for you. So I mentioned this, Dave, and you don't mind if I call you Dave. I know you're Brazilian. We hear the people coming out or running for office, and thank God we have good people running for office. I mean, you need that, because good politicians make for good government, as my good friend Pastor Soul, God rest her soul, Ethel Price said to me many years ago. So when you ran, all right, there were things that you wanted to address. So let's talk about what you've done and what you wanted to address.
Well, the title doctor, it means teacher, basically. So education was one of the main focuses. I saw a deficit. The previous coroners would have meetings with their deputies maybe once a year. I figured it was time to get a very educated deputy force, and we started having monthly meetings. And then I initiated an annual forensic science symposium. And the first year we did it, it was in April of 2012. We did not have time to have it certified by the Attorney General's office in Pennsylvania. But the other 7 that we've had, the most recent one was the end of April in 2019. We've gotten credits to give to coroners, chief deputy coroners, for their required annual certification. And it's been quite a draw. We've had coroners from all over the state, as far away as Pittsburgh, Washington County, up to Pike County and Allentown. So we're kind of proud of that, and we've already set the date for 2020. And I want to emphasize something. We're in a budget crisis. Mm-hmm. You might have heard in the newspapers that within the last week or so, the county has gotten approval to float a bond issue for like $12 million. That's basically they have to take out a loan. So I've been very conscious of spending in this effort to run the coroner's office. And the annual symposium that is actually run by the Educational and Scientific Trust of the Simon Kramer Cancer Institute. And there's no out of the coffers for the county for this effort. And it puts us, I think, in the forefront. There's very few of the 67 counties that have such a symposium. We've been able to bring in fantastic speakers. Last year we had Dr. Cyril Wecht, who is not a Pennsylvania pathologist. He's internationally renowned for his work in forensic pathology. We also had a speaker come in from Las Vegas, that's Clark County, Nevada, and she spoke on the mass killings that they had from the Mandalay Bay shooting. She gave a fantastic talk. I've already lined up a speaker for this April, and the date's going to be April 25th. And the speaker is a sheriff from Cochise County, and his work on interdicting the flow of drugs that are coming across that southern border. We're at the other end of this, the railroad. We're at the other terminus where the fentanyl and the other terrible drugs come in, but he's doing his job right on the Mexican border. So that's the educational efforts that we have lined up.
So how does that translate? You know, when I'm listening to you bringing speakers in and you're having these meetings, and how does that translate to the average person? What does it mean to me as a Schuylkill County taxpayer?
They're better educated. It's a finer deputy force.
And why is that important to me?
Well, I'd say the main reason is you want to get to an accurate determination of cause and manner. And if basically the first responder, which is the deputy coroner on the scene, if they're not taking notes properly, documenting what might be an inconsequential finding to family members, but might have a clue on what was the cause of death. So again, the end product is to determine cause and manner, and the better trained your deputies are, you're going to get a better result.
Okay, so that's how it affects me as a taxpayer.
Exactly.
Okay. I may not need it now, but God forbid if something should happen, I do have a trained person coming in, which could mean financial consequences if
Absolutely.
And that's where I think,
Yep.
that's what I'm trying to say. So you're bringing all these people in and educating them. How does it then translate to the actual taxpayer? In terms of records, particularly in your area as a coroner, when someone dies, you have to have records. So you will improve the record keeping, correct?
Well, before 2012, the records were basically kept on paper with massive files that had to be stored somewhere. And in fact, they were stored in a locker or garage style rental facility in Branchdale, and it was costing the county $170 a month to store records, pathology slides, evidence from various cases. So I saw that and I said, we've got to end that expense. So what I did was to contract with commercial companies that supply electronic health records, medical records, and we initially started one called Forensic Filer. They were very good, but after several years, they went out of business, and we transferred our records, electronic records at the time, to a new vendor called Forensic Filer. It was previously eCedent, now it's Forensic Filer. But anyway, that's great savings, and it gives all the investigators access to these, and they're very secure. We apply the same security measures required in the HIPAA regulations for living people. We apply the same thing for our decedents.
When you're talking about the budget, okay, have you been able to live within your budget?
We have, with one exception, and that was, I believe, 2015, when we saw this tremendous spike in drug overdoses. And I would say that that's probably one of the most expensive outlays in investigating deaths is toxicology. And we were working with a company called a National Medical Laboratory in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. They give wonderful service, but it's quite expensive. And many of those drug deaths had also had to undergo autopsies, open autopsies. And again, currently they start around $2,000 per autopsy, and they can go up to $3,000 by the time you're done with toxicology. So that is a tremendous expense. The other thing about the electronic record and the storage was that I petitioned the commissioners to move the coroner's office from the 911 center, where they had a small facility there. Again, storage was a problem that they had to outsource. And the commissioners allowed me to place the coroner's office over at the Simon Kramer Cancer Institute. Now, I think you've been there. It's a huge building, 60,000 square feet, and many classrooms. And what I did at my own expense was to take one of the classrooms and break it down into a coroner's office. We have a meeting room. We have offices for the chief deputy coroner. We have storage for specimens, and then we have a reception area, as well as storage for equipment that we use in the death investigations. We have that. We also have a large caged-in area in the basement where we store the records that had formerly been at Branchdale, which cost the county $170 a month. And then over the years, we also brought in the mobile morgue, and we've added some cold storage facilities. And the whole package to the county presently is $200 a month.
What were they paying?
They were paying $170 for a little garage storage.
Garage, yeah. So you expanded
that.
I've
taken care of the storage, and for an extra $30, they have a suite of offices.
Yeah.
They have a morgue and
efficient
storage for the decedents. We were really in a crisis when I took the office, in that the local hospital, I believe it was Pottsville Hospital at the time, they decided to get out of death investigation business. They would not let the pathologist do cases, and they said, please don't store bodies in the morgue. So we were scrambling, and we came up with cost-effective means of storing the decedents.
So here's what I'm saying, Dr. Moylan. When we talk about, and you've already done this, so I'm not giving you any accolades, I'm saying, so we're talking about putting people in office or keeping people in office who are effective at what they're doing, because remember, you could get, if you go crazy with your budget and you need money, it comes back to the taxpayers. So because you're efficient enough and being able to look at that, correct me if I'm wrong, these are facts, you're able to improve in the coroner's office. Now, when it comes to something like the drug problem, this is something that was not in your budget. So these are things that just pop up.
Who could have known?
Who could have known that, okay? So it always, for example, you just said $12 million bond. Well, if you have budgets and you have to live with the budgets, I know sometimes things pop in different row offices that, happen. But putting people into office who have the experience, okay, to do that affects me. All right, and that's where some people say, well, why should I be concerned about the clerk of courts or the coroner's office? Well, you should be, at least put people in there who are qualified. Am I correct in saying that?
I think that there is a role for professionalism in these various offices. And one of my other row officers, who was a CPA, he's in charge of handling the money.
Yeah.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yep. Well, you're a doctor besides. All right. So not only do you bring a lot more experience, I think, okay, to the coroner's office.
Well, my 40 years of practice, they're in the field of cancer medicine, but I've been able to recruit other physicians that help me out.
Yeah.
My chief deputy is Dr. Joe Weber, practiced what we call north of the mountain for 40 plus years at the Ashland Hospital, and he's had his experiences in internal medicine. Okay, what are the chief causes of natural death in Pennsylvania and the United States? Basically, it's cardiovascular diseases, stroke, diabetes. That's Dr. Weber's area of expertise, and then cancer deaths, where I've focused on that in my practice. But I also have a third physician in the practice, who is Dr. Herb Rubright. And for years, he was in charge of the county home in Schuylkill Haven, Rest Haven it was called, and he's invaluable to us. And I'm in the process of recruiting yet a fourth physician. Now, when our administrator for the county heard I'm recruiting all these doctors, he said, what are they going to charge us? And I said, same as every other deputy, $15 an hour. So where can you get additional doctors for $15 an hour?
Yeah. Folks, I'm talking to Dr. David Moylan. He is the Schuylkill County Coroner, and he's up for re-election November 5th. And once again, we'd like to bring information to you. If you're a Schuylkill County resident, it affects you, folks. All the row officers, the commissioners, anyone, even judges. It affects your life. But knowing about them and knowing what they've done is important. When we come back, we're going to talk about virtual autopsies and the transportation of bodies and storage, okay? And the problem, listen, this is something, of unclaimed bodies. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Thanks for joining us. My guest today is Dr. David Moylan, Schuylkill County Coroner. Remember, folks, all of our shows, all of our local neighborhood programs on the website, ssptv.com. Great brand new website, very easy to get to, and you'll see every show there. So you go back and see whatever shows we produce. Particularly this show we're doing now with Dr. Moylan. He is up for re-election for Schuylkill County Coroner. What has he done? The first part of the show, he's explained what he's done. Now we're going to continue on. You brought in the story of virtual autopsies. I happened to be there one day when you were doing one, which I found very interesting. Tell me about it.
Well, I'm going to give you the history. And there's a saying in Schuylkill County, don't reinvent the wheel, steal it. Well, we didn't steal this, but we borrowed it. It was a technique that had been popularized over in Switzerland. The Israelis have programs in it. But, we investigated it, and again, an educational effort. I took about 7 deputies at my expense down to University of Maryland, and they have a very active program there in which the CAT scan, postmortem CAT scan, CT scan, is incorporated in death investigations. In fact, in their very large morgue facility, there's a CAT scanner in the center and then autopsy rooms off on either side. And they've published on this, and it's a very important tool. Will it ever replace the open traditional autopsies? Certainly not in cases of capital crimes, whatever, where somebody could pay for their life with it. Because like any test, there's can be false positives, false negatives. But we started the program at the Ashland Hospital. It was St. Catherine's Medical Center at the time. And they allowed us to bring bodies there after hours and do these CT scans. They charged the county $200, for the very sophisticated machine, running the electricity, having a technician there, et cetera. So it was a fair price. And in fact, I've spoken to hospital administrators, and I said, what would you charge if it was just me going in there, a living patient, and I didn't have insurance and I was willing to pay out of pocket? What would you charge for doing the head, the chest, the abdomen, the pelvis? And they said, doctor, that would be about $1,200 cash. That's not the insurance price. The insurance price would probably be $8,000. Mm-hmm. So, it's basically prohibitive at those rates, and you're almost up to the level that you'd have to pay for an open autopsy. But anyway, we did about 40 cases up there. Then St. Catherine's went out of business. We found a private radiologist up in Hazelden on Church Road. You probably know the guy. But he allowed us to do after-hours scanning there, and he would charge, again, $200, again, which was fair. Now, he doesn't do the reading. I've done all the readings. I've done over 1,500 of them so far. So it's a wealth of experience. But when he decided to close his practice, I personally bought the CT scan, had it moved to Simon Kramer Cancer Institute, and since 2013, that's where we've been doing these CAT scans.
Yeah. Saving a lot of money.
Well, at what we're the county currently pays the technician, who's a Hazleton resident,
Yeah.
comes down, he does the scan, and he's a deputy, and he is paid $50 a case, okay? Then we do need other deputies to assist him at moving these
Yeah.
bodies around. And so I would say that the cost to Schuylkill County right now is about $80, no more than $100 for a CAT scan.
Yeah.
And we just had an accident. We can calculate how much blood the man had lost. And we saw all the internal injuries, et cetera. And it would be rather pointless to open the body up.
Yeah. Transport of bodies in storage. Recently, there's been some stories about this.
Again, 2012, flashback to 2012. One of the larger items on the budget was to move bodies from here to there. Now, if the body would die at Pottsville Hospital, the person died at Pottsville Hospital, the body would just go down to the morgue. But if it was somewhere else out in the community, the body, and if you're going to bring the body in for an investigation, you'd have to hire someone to do that. And there were transport deputies, and they would charge the county $80 to move the body. Well, it could be from Tower City into Pottsville, which is a stretch, but it could be from Schuylkill Haven 3 miles up to Pottsville. It was the same fee of $80. So I said, we can do better than that. And one of my former deputies, Joe Pothering, he found an ambulance for sale. It was from Centralia, and we were able to pick up this diesel-powered old ambulance. It was in great condition for $4,400. And that's what we've been using to transport bodies since then. It only had 30,000 miles on it, and a diesel engine, it should make 300,000, you know?
Yeah.
So that's been a tremendous savings, and the deputies will go out, and again, for $15 an hour, they bring the bodies in. So it's quite a savings of, you know, versus the 80 as a flat fee.
What about unclaimed bodies?
Sam, this is the terrible thing.
Yeah.
You know, the corporal works of mercy to bury the dead.
Yeah.
So people are just walking away from their, I guess they weren't loved ones or they wouldn't walk away from them. And then the
They're just leaving the bodies.
They won't claim the body. They won't claim the body. So of course, it's now the body's a ward of the county. So we respectfully take care of the situation. But when I first came on duty, these were costing the county about $760 per case.
Wow.
And I put out a request for a proposal, and several funeral directors stepped up to the plate and said, no, we'll help the county out. We will help the county out. That's what it amounts to. They're doing the county a big favor. And now we're paying about half of that. Wow. But I have in my office about 20 cremains. That's the term for the ashes, the cremains of citizens of Schuylkill County. 1 or 2 of them are veterans, but on October 5th...
And they're unclaimed.
Unclaimed.
And they're a veteran.
Yeah.
That breaks your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, it breaks your heart.
But what our plan is, we're going to, and this would be the second time we've done it, we're going to inter the ashes in the Potter's Field, which the county used to own. It was on the Rest Haven property. The new owners of Rest Haven, Rosewood it's called, they're very cooperative. And on October 5th, we're going to have a burial and a funeral for these ashes. And the ones that are veterans, we're able to get them buried down at Fort Indian Town Gap. But it's just an incredible problem, and it just, you know, have to shake your head.
I know, it's interesting because when you look at your office, the Schuylkill County Coroner's office, there's so many things that are involved in this office that are critical, and you need, you know, here again, leadership and direction for people who understand or are qualified. your record speaks for itself, Dr. Moylan. I mean, your record speaks for itself. Now, we could probably go on and on for long, but I'm going to ask you to come back again, if you would, because there's other things that I want to ask you about, and you're educating me as well. You're educating not only people from Schuylkill County, but we show this in Luzerne County as well. But I think there's a lot that a person should understand about the coroner's office. Wouldn't you think so?
I do, and I think when I first ran, it was at the request of Dr. Dick Bendy, who's a great friend and pathologist in our community. And I said, Dick, I'll do it for one session.
Yeah.
And there's so much work to be done. I am very much interested in serving a third term. And maybe the next time we get together, I can talk to you about some future endeavors.
You got it. Talking to Dr. David Moylan, folks. He's no stranger to the show. He's been on a number of times, but he's up for re-election November 5th. Check the facts, check the records. He's here today. He's telling you a lot of stuff, what he's done. Not only he talks about it, he actually does it, which is interesting for politicians these days. Remember, they'll tell you anything, folks. You'll hear everything under the sun, how wonderful they are, and what do you get? But when you look at people who've been in office and you said, this is what they said they were going to do, and they did it. Wow. Isn't that something? We'll be back with part 2 in the near future. Stay tuned.